Welcome back to Endly Introduction. Now I'll be focused on the variables. Variables control workflow execution and data substitution. Variable can be defined at any node level, at the global level on your workflow in the init section, but it also can be placed at the task or even action level. Any reference to variable start with the dollar expression, and the variable is expanded as long as the defining variable is there, or UDF returns non-error. You can nest variable with another variable using curly bracket expression, and you can also use basic arithmetic operation. So when you're working with multiple workflows, that one workflow call another workflow, or even with the simple workflow, it is a good idea to define certain required parameters. In order to do it, you just place exclamation mark in front of the variable. So let's try to run this basic workflow, which is print a message. So let me quickly run it. When I run it without supplying the parameters that's required, I see an error saying variable 2 is required by the workflow, and I see all the other parameters that are being passed at the moment. So let me try to fix it. Now I'll be passing two variables. Great, and I see my hello Endly. Let's look closely in those init sections. So the first variable is required. The second one is taken from the command line, and then message uses conditional variable assignment, where it checks if the greeting has a dollar, which most likely hasn't been expanded. Then I'll be using hello with message of variable 2. Otherwise, I'll be using greeting that has been supplied in the command line parameter. So let me test it quickly. And there we are. So now instead of hello Endly, I've got greeting Endly. Okay. Beside the variables, you can also use the dollar expression with the UDF, and there's the list of the supported UDF. So you've got conversion UDF to given type. You can UDF that can load the file, or base64, and another interesting thing. So in the example I've prepared for you is that data formatting, which I believe is very useful, especially if you're proceeding, database with some table and they need to be there. So you can use the format time UDF, which has a very helpful function like formatting days at a given time at given UTC. So here is just example. And what else we can tell about the variables? Variable could be at any form. You can have an array, you can have array of objects, and then the special operation when it comes to arrays. Once you define your array, you can at any action you can shift element from array, or you can push the element of array. So let's look closer in that example. Maybe you can quickly run it. This variable collection. So we could run it and we see what happened here. Okay, so I just run it here. So let me put the output on the side and try to understand what happens here. So at the init section, I've defined an array of the 3 elements with ID1, name1 to ID3 and name3. In the first action shift, I'm just shifting the first element from the array, meaning I'm removing it, and just printing the item as a JSON. So this is the first item. Okay. Next element, I'm defining variable slightly differently. I'm just providing the name and value. This is the name of my variable, this is the value. In the next item, I'm just pushing this element to array. Note that there's various ways you can define variable. The easier way is just provide the name and the value. It's again name and then value for that variable. But you can also use this extended format when you have the name and value and other attribute if you ever need to use them. So let's go back to the push. So in the second action, we're just pushing element with ID 10 and name 10. Then we print last name info. So let's see, we do print, and the message is array from I, just name. And I is defined here as a 2. So that's my last name info. And finally, in the summary, I'm just printing the whole array via as JSON UDF. So it shows me this array from 2, 3, and 10 element. Then, as I also called it out, you can use the basic arithmetic. Make sure that you're using the oval brackets for precedence, to enforce precedence. Okay, so the next very important item is the action template. It's a really powerful mechanism because it allows you to repeat n times group of the action defined under template node. So imagine that I want to have this 2 action repeated, I don't know, 2 or 100 times. This technique is mostly used to organize your regression tests when you may end up having, you know, hundreds or even 1,000 different use cases, depending, you know, how big your application is. And so this is the technique that allows you to do it. So let's quickly look in that workflow. So you've got the init section and then done section. Task S section has the special attribute. One is called template, another one is the range. So the range tells you how many times do you want to repeat your action, your template actions. And it could be in a number. It doesn't need to start even from 1. Sometimes you want to just, you know, out of 100 cases, you want to just focus on one or few use cases. So you can just provide, I don't know, 5 to 005 or whatever the range you want to specify here. Important thing is that here, instead of just placing 1 to 2, I'm just placing 1 to 002. That 002 defines number of the padding I will be used in my $index variable. And why is it important? Because there's one extra special attribute in the action template, which is the subpath. So subpath allows you dynamically discover assets under the subpath directory that is being expanded. So in this case, index is defined as a 2 padding 0. So I'm also using those 2 padding 0 here. You may end up with 3 padding 0, 4 padding 0 if you want to, but then you need to adjust the naming here and naming in your subfolder. So let's see really what happens with this expansion. Obviously, just repeating action X time wouldn't make much sense unless you've got extra items that can differentiate one repeated group from the other one. And those elements are variables. There are special variables like index, tag ID, path, and even subpath, right? And with those variables, you can do a lot of stuff. And also, when you use the relative path, the first thing that this asset will be looked at is the directory defined in the subpath. So, for example, here in this action tool, we're using request print delegation. So in every single folder, I'll try to look for that asset. If I don't find it here, then I will kind of fall back to the default directory and try to pull that asset from here. Otherwise, I'll just throw an error. So that asset has to be defined either in the subdirectories or in the default folder. So okay, let's kind of move. Good. So let's run this workflow and see what happens. So let me quickly run it. Okay, and just run it. So what we can see, our init, which is just printing here, and then we've got those kind of folder defined almost like a use cases with the basic case XX and basic case YY, where each of those cases define action 1, prints whatever has been defined action 1 with all those variables expanded. And we can see that action 2, actually I'm printing default message. So my default message looks like this. So I have default message and just expanding with the index. So let me go back here. Okay. Another important thing is with the using the action template, you can actually run only a particular instance of that template. In this case, you would use I parameter. So let me give you an example. So in this case, I will just run the second use case, case YY. Okay. So you see, there's no case XX, it's just case YY. Additional important items of the templates is that description. So in this case, I'm looking for this use case description. And if that description is defined in the subfolder, I'll provide a quick description of the use case. So you have those two extra lines being printed here. So let's go back to our action template, and I believe we covered pretty much everything. Okay, there's one extra item that we need to call it here. So in the tag, you can specify what do you want this tag to be expanded with. So if I had path match, in this case, anything which has been matched in this wildcard will be printed here. If I just put tag here test, then instead of this particular match subpath, I will have test all over the places. So it is really, your decision. How do you want to format and display information about these instances of the sub actions? Okay. So let's move next. Another example I have is the data loading. So the workflow on its own can have its own set of the data, which is just the map of keys, and those keys can be of any type with the map slices or just basic types. With the action templates, the data attribute act kind of a special role. It's gonna look in the every single subfolder data directory. So let me open this stress test example. Yeah. Okay. So in this case, it will try to match any assets with this path, and will try to load it to the tag, and will load it as a slice, which means each of these file that defines JSON will be converted in the element in item, element in array, with exactly the same data structure as shown here. Okay. So also I'm using here the tag ID, so later when I'm running the use cases, I can reference dispatch those requests just by tag ID. So even if it's a global data variable, it's still key by the tag ID, which is the instance of my template action instance. Okay, so let's quickly look what happens in this workflow. So this is slightly more complex workflow because various actions are that init action, which just initialize a bunch of the variable from index num of the thread for the stress testing endpoint and test endpoint. Then I'm starting endpoint listen, which is really kind of mock HTTP server when it can replay previously recorded operation on HTTP, and this directly holds definition of those requests that I want to replay. Okay. And then I'm printing starting testing, and this is where the actually load testing starts. So I will be issuing like 40,000 requests. So I will repeat every single of those requests, 40,000. And yeah, at the end, I'll just write just the information about those tests. So let me quickly run it and then see really what happens here. So, okay, we put it there. So now I'm running the stress test. Okay, so I'm just testing my my endpoint. So that's the first use case. So you can see it says test 0, load test 001. I haven't specified the tag attribute on the template level, so it kind of fall back to the default. Yeah, so I had the first use case pass, and I had so many validation for every single request I sent over. And I'm just running a second use case for the second endpoint.